Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Melanie. This is Adventures in Hostessville, and welcome to episode 19 of the Vintage Magazine Project and the third episode of the May 1933 Everyday Science and Mechanics. Ba-da-bum, ba-dum-bum, bum, ba-da-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So the article I want to take a look at today is called Make Money with Concrete Stone-Studded Garden Ornaments. And what they're suggesting is that you're going to make a bunch of these giant concrete things, and then you can go find somebody's vacant lot and set up shop. And all you have to do is give the owner of said vacant lot 10% of your proceeds. In 1933, unemployment in the United States is at 25%. Everybody's looking for a way to make a little bit more money. Unless, of course, you don't care about making money and you decide to just take it. And in terms of bank robbers, we are about to set off on one of the greatest crime sprees of all time, because May 1933 is when John Dillinger gets paroled. Okay, so the first thing I have to do is make what is called a sweep. Then I'm gonna dig a hole in the ground and sweep it around and make that shape inside. I am not making a 3-foot tall bird bath that I'm going to put in a Melanie-sized hole in the ground. I'm just going to use a little one. So if you're not familiar with John Dillinger, he is one of the most famous gangsters. He was, in fact, the first person to be named public enemy #1 by J. Edgar Hoover. He has just spent 9.5 years in prison for what is essentially a first offense. It's not his first time doing something illegal, but it is his first time getting arrested. I think he's robbing a gas station or something. And his dad suggests he pleads guilty because he thinks then they'll be more lenient since it's his first offense. That is not what happens. They give him 10 to 20 years. And of that 10 to 20 years, he ends up serving 9.5. So he spent basically the whole of his 20s in jail. 13.5 divided by 4. 3 3/8, I think. So Dillinger spends his time in jail doing what a lot of people do, and that is studying and learning new career skills. In his case, he chooses bank robber. He meets up with a lot of really more hardened criminals in jail, and he spends a lot of time learning from them. He's released in May, and his first major bank robbery is in June. And what he's doing is stealing money to buy guns and bulletproof vests and stuff so he can effect this jailbreak and get all his buddies out. And it works. And they immediately go to work robbing lots of banks. But, of course, a gangster cannot live on crime alone. And he ends up with his main girlfriend, Evelyn Billie Frechette. Later, she said, yeah, we were talking about getting married. We'd been together forever. I mean, it was 7 months. I once dated a guy for 7 years and he started talking about marriage and I was like, whoa, 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 where's the fire? That may say more about me than it does about Billie Frechette. So Billie has these 2 best friends within the gang, and they are 2 sisters, Pat Charrington and Opal Mack Truck Long. Okay, change of plans. It started raining. So I have got this pot that was for last summer's tomatoes, which is filled with dirt. So I'm gonna try and do it in here. So now I have to dig out a hole in here so that I can put the form in. And this is one thing that the magazine says you can have your oldest daughter do for you, which is literally the only place in the entire magazine they really acknowledge that women exist. Which is sort of what it's also like when you're reading about gangsters. They'll sometimes talk about the gun malls and stuff, but they're always sort of presented as this sexy woman with a cigarette and a gun. That was not Opal Mack Truck Long. So Opal, as you might guess from her nickname, is not a slight woman. She does not like the nickname Mack Truck. She wants to be called Bernice. But she was the girlfriend of Russell Clark, who was one of these guys in this first Dillinger gang that Dillinger had broken out of jail. But she is sort of the one that does the cooking and the cleaning, and she's a real caretaker. And they said that she's really considerate. Like, she's the one that if there's not enough chairs in the room, she'll just stand all night long and insist that you take her seat. She also swears like a sailor, apparently, and she's a little bit of a sloppy dresser. You know, she doesn't mend her clothes as well as she might, so she doesn't fit into this, like, image that we have of this gangster moll. This isn't going to work. It won't stick. I don't even know if this would have worked if I was using the actual ground, because I think they think I have a lot sandier soil than I do. So I'm going to start over and make, like, I don't know, maybe a little pot instead of something quite this intricate. I don't think this is gonna work. So the gang is doing all of these criminally things, and they kind of take a break for Christmas, and they reconvene in Tucson in January of 1934, and they get busted there. There's a raid and they all get arrested. And the reason that they got busted was actually because there was a fire at the hotel that they were staying at, and one of the firemen actually was like a huge fan of pulp magazines, so he would read True Crime and True Detective and all of this stuff, and he recognized Russell Clark, Opal's boyfriend, and one of the other gang members. And so he calls the cops and they get arrested. And Opal and Billie are arrested as well, but Billie is using a fake name. She's going by Ann Martin, and the police don't actually know who she is. They do know who Opal is, and she's not noticeable. Cops go after Russell, and apparently one of them pistol whips him, and he gets unconscious. And nice, sweet, how do you like your eggs? Opal, like, hulks out, and she starts beating him up. She slams his finger in the door. He breaks a finger. She ends up getting taken in, and she's got a black eye, and she's got lacerations all over her face. But they do release her on bail, and Opal's like trying to visit Clark in jail. They won't let her because she can't prove that they're married. I don't know if they are or not. She says they are, but she can't prove it. But by March of 1934, Dillinger breaks out, and the way he does it is by threatening a guard with a gun. According to legend, it's actually a wooden gun that he carved from a shelf and then colored with shoe polish. I don't know. Do jails have, like, shelves and shoe polish for you? Maybe. I've never been to jail. I would like it to stay that way. This isn't gonna work. It's not gonna work. It's still all crumbling inside of here. Hold on, I gotta figure out another backup plan. All right, here we are on plan Q, R, S, somewhere in there. Nothing was gonna stick into that dirt. So I have made a batch of Play-Doh because I am resourceful, and I'm gonna mold a tiny little garden ornament shaped hole out of this. Here we go, a hole to put things in. I'm gonna start putting these shells in, and it's gonna work, and it's gonna be great. So Dillinger has escaped from jail, and he has hightailed it to Chicago, where Billie is staying with her sister Patsy, and then they ultimately land in St. Paul, and Billie rents them a hideout, which is apartment 303 of the Lincoln Court Apartments on Lexington Avenue South. And they register there as Mr. and Mrs. Carl Hellman. But there's a landlady who's maybe a little bit nosy, but she notices that the people in 303 only ever use the back door. They don't ever open the blinds. And when she tries to send in a repairman to fix the bathroom fixture, they won't let the repairman in. And so she is suspicious. And she goes downtown St. Paul to find some federal agents. The police were sort of investigating a couple of kidnappings that had happened. And so she goes, this landlady, goes to the agents, and she's like, it might be them. So a couple of agents go over. Their last names are Knowles and Colson, which is totally normal, but their first names are Rusty and Rufus. So Rusty and Rufus go over there. They see the window, and, like, yes, the blinds are drawn. But they're like, well, I don't know. I mean, it's night. So the next morning, Opal gets up and she's like, I gotta get some breakfast and I gotta get some groceries. So she and Pat head out. Billie and Dillinger are still asleep, but Rusty and Rufus come back and they bring with them a St. Paul City detective named Henry Cummings. I'm starting to feel like this magazine is just having me on a little bit. This has been impossible to get things to stick into actual sticky Play-Doh. I cannot imagine if I had actually dug the 14-foot trench they recommended and was like down, I would be buried. I would be buried alive. You would never see me again. But it's time to put in the concrete. I don't have any concrete. I'm gonna use this grout from the time I redid my tiles. So their direction of how to make the concrete, grout, plaster, whatever, is not too thick and not too soupy. Thanks, magazine. Okay, so March 31st, 1934. Coulter, Molls, and Cummings all go back to the Lincoln Court apartments. And they decide that one of them should probably stay outside. And so I think it is Rusty Molls that does that, and Coulter and Cummings go into the building. Billie opens the door, but she hasn't had her Charleston bracer yet. And the guys say, hi, is Carl home? And she's like, who? And they're like, Carl? Hellman? Your husband? And she's like, oh, yes, Carl Hellman, my husband, who I definitely know by that name. No, he's not here. So they say, okay, well, that's all right. We can talk to you. And she says, well, I'm not dressed. And they say, well, that's okay. We'll wait. So she shuts the door and she's like, what do we do? What do we do? Oh my God. And Dillinger's like, calm down, throw some stuff in a bag. So they're throwing stuff in a bag and getting dressed and all this stuff. And outside, these two guys are just waiting at the door. So Molls is outside on the street waiting, and he sees this green car pull up, and this tall, skinny guy gets out of it and walks into the building. He doesn't really think much about it. It's a big apartment building. So the skinny guy, who turns out to be Homer Van Meter, who is now a part of this Dillinger, Babyface, Nelson gang, he goes upstairs. He's looking for somebody named Johnson. So he sees these two plainclothes. He doesn't know they're detectives. He sees them outside Dillinger's door, and he's like, hey, you Johnson? And they're like, no. Who are you? And he's like, I'm a soap salesman. And they're like, oh yeah, where are your samples? And he's like, they're downstairs in my car. And they said, do you have any identification? He's like, yeah, that's also downstairs in my car. So he starts going down the stairs, and then he turns around with his gun, and he's like, you like this? Boom! And he starts like shooting at the cops. And so the one cop that had followed him is like jumping into the stairwell. They're having this shootout. Upstairs, of course, Dillinger hears these gunshots, so they know what's going down, and Billie's like, don't shoot, John, just like be cool, don't shoot. And he's like, I'm gonna be cool. And the way that he's cool is to grab a Thompson submachine gun and just start like straight at the door. There's like 17 bullet holes in the door, and she's like, what are you doing, John? You're supposed to be cool. He's like, put the stuff in the bag, give me the bag. Meanwhile, Coulter or Cummings or whichever one it is has chased Van Meter out. Molls, who's on the street, is like, oh, the tall, skinny guy I just watched go in is now in a shootout with my partners. So they shoot out the tire of that car so he can't get away. And Van Meter like grabs the side of a passing coal truck and is like, bye. Meanwhile, somehow, Billie and Dillinger have gotten out the back door of the building. They've gone to the garage where the car is. He's usually the driver, but he's been hit. Like one of the bullets that he has blasted into this door has ricocheted into his leg. He's streaming blood. And he's like, you gotta drive, Billie. And she's like, okay. And she like drives into the side of the garage door. He's like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm working on it. She goes tearing off, and he's like, slow down, you're gonna attract attention. She's like, we just had a shootout with the cops, John, you know. So they go off, and they do actually manage to get away. Coulter runs to the drugstore on the corner to call for backup because that's how you get backup in 1933. So Opal and Pat come back from getting breakfast and groceries and they're walking, they're like heading towards the building and they're like, whoa, just keep going. This is filled. This is like, this is probably a mistake, but this is like a little meat pie now, almost filled with plaster, but I don't want it to be solid in the middle. So what I'm gonna do is scoop some of this out. So while it's drying, did I mention that the Lincoln Court Apartments at 95 Lexington Avenue South are about a 10-minute walk from my house? Let's go see it. Okay, here it is. The Lincoln Court Apartments where that shootout happened. And here's that back door that they came running out of. Here. There's an apartment for rent. Somebody should grab it. So 303 would be up on the top floor there. I'm not sure which unit exactly. So this would be that front door, I guess, from whence Homer Van Meter came running after having shot the cops. This is very exciting. I've never done a field trip episode before. When, you know, I have my own show on public television or the History Channel or something. And then there will be someone here to make sure I don't actually get hit by a car as I cross the street. Oh my gosh, look at this. Swan planter just down the street from the Lincoln Court Apartments. This is exactly what I am trying to make and failing miserably at. This is a magical history miracle moment. Oops. Okay, it's the next day. My little meat pie is, the plaster is kind of hard and the Play-Doh is less so, which is what I wanted. So I'm gonna try and break off the Play-Doh and reveal the creation inside. So this run-in in St. Paul is sort of the end for Opal as far as being a Dillinger Mall. The Dillinger gang doesn't know about the nosy landlady, and so the only thing they can figure as to how they got busted is that the FBI must have tailed Opal. Plus, Dillinger feels like all she does is ask him to help her get Russell Clark out of jail, and he's like, I gotta worry about myself right now. So she and Pat don't really have any other means of support. They end up in Chicago, and an informant turns them in, and they both get arrested for harboring a criminal, and things actually do kind of work out, I guess, for Opal after that. She gets out of jail. By the time she does, the Dillinger gang is done, because in July of 34, he is gunned down by federal agents outside the Biograph Theater in Chicago. She ends up marrying somebody else. She must have given up on Russell Clark. Ultimately, he was sentenced to life. He gets out a little bit early for terminal ill health. He has cancer and he's released in 1968 and he lives for just a couple of more months. She dies in 1969, which is the same year that Billie Frechette dies, and they are sort of the last remaining Dillinger members. I'm trying to pick out the last bits of Play-Doh. Some of the rocks are coming out as well, but not all of them. I say, who talks like that? It kind of looks like that the mouth in Return of the Jedi that Jabba the Hutt is going to put everybody down into. Uh-oh. Okay, here it is. My garden ornament. It is tiny. It is odd. It's missing a shell right there. But honestly, like, it doesn't look that different from the pictures in the magazine if you are standing very, very far away and looking in the other direction. What's 1/4 of 40? Oh my gosh, 10.